What are your most disturbing / unsettling memories from your childhood? Getting up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water to find my 13-year-old big brother with his back pressed to the door, holding a knife. He told me to get down, and the handle started jiggling, and the door shaking. We spent the next 20 to 30 minutes watching shapes in the dark creep around the yard. I don't really know what bothers me the most. People trying to get into our house. My brother ready to kill someone if they tried. Or the fact that we were alone and I never knew where my mom was at 2 AM while it was happening. I can only hope you'll have as much courage as your brother had if this ever happens to me. I hope you never have to. My mom was often not around and my brother had to grow up and be my protector at an age far too young to have to. His mental health really suffered as we grew up. Having to crawl out my bedroom window and run to a neighborhood night to call an ambulance for my mother, who had tried to kill herself because she couldn't handle staying with her abusive ex anymore. I was 10. Even better, my bitch of a teacher treating me like shit for missing a bit of school the next day to go see her in the hospital. And yes, the teacher knew the reason. Yeah, I know I had a teacher like that. Humiliated me and didn't allow me to leave, and sat and cried through nearly a whole class about the death of my main caretaker, Mrs. Phillips. I think about that moment all the time. Extreme anger. I think about the words I would use in a letter to tell her how damaging it was, or how I would see her on some chance crossing of paths and I'd tell her all the wonderful things I wound up accomplishing, and how it's in no way thanks to her. Tell her how it took the military and addiction and earning and losing huge amounts of money in my career before going back to school for something mentally sustainable, and how much I had to learn the hard way because I was avoiding touching this bruised area that was formal education. Oof man. That teacher bit kind of triggered me more than when I think of all the abuse and loss I was suffering at home, and I will never be able to explain why. My younger brother had a teacher like that in 2nd grade. She was so terrible to my brother that it caused him to be held back. We went to the same elementary school. I was 2 grades above him, and I remember getting on the bus to go home where he was just be a sad mess. I didn't know what to do as a 4th grader. It eventually got so bad my parents managed to cooperate enough to file a formal complaint to get him out of the class. When I was 6, my neighbor's daughter would babysit me. She was around 19 or 20. She wasn't particularly nice to me. Sometimes I had to go over there very early and would sleep. I was a bedwetter and she refused to get up to help clean me off, and would get furious if I tried myself, so I would just lay on the floor in my own pee until she woke up. She would also tell me we were going to play hide and seek, and then I'd hide and wait, and then, thinking I'd really bested her, I'd come out from my hiding spot and she'd be painting her nails or some such. Her mother's boyfriend also held me over a toilet by one leg with a lighter in front of my face. Told me he'd kill me and my mom and dad if I ever said anything. My babysitter's boyfriend would also be around sometimes. One day, I was coloring on the bed with the 2 of them when she got up and left to use the bathroom. Her driver's license was lying on the bed, and he picked it up and chewed it. When she came back, he told her I did it, and I got in trouble. It really unsettled me because it was so bizarre, and I knew it even then. He did other weird things that I can no longer remember. I knew grown-ups were not supposed to act like him, and I tried my best to stay away from him after that. Not 2 weeks after that, he smothered my babysitter, killing her and her unborn child. I was not there, but I could have been, and I wonder what would have happened to me if I had been. Well then. Sounds like he was an actual psychopath. I'm sorry you went through that. He went free, too. I lived in an apartment in a real bad neighborhood growing up, but one of the worst is when I was about 11 years old and a drunk neighbor tried to flirt with me and asked me to take my clothes off when I was playing on my scooter, and then chased my mom up the stairs with a massive knife when she came out and yelled at him to leave me alone. What the fuck? Hope you and your mom are okay. We were fine but freaked out. My mom got into the apartment and locked the door, and another neighbor threatened to shoot him and chased him off. In the middle of the night I woke up to seeing shadows from the window of people trying to break in. I was scared and tried to go to my parents' room, My mom was making weird noises and I thought maybe she was having asthma attack. My parents won't let me in their room. They were doing the deed. I couldn't sleep hearing all the weird noises. The people never made it to the house, but they robbed gym clothes from my dad's car parked outside. Imagine if you'd walked in. Everyone's embarrassed and horrified about being caught. And you're like, yeah, also someone is trying to break into the house. Imagine if you'd walked in. Everyone's embarrassed and horrified about being caught. And you're like, yeah, also, my parents are having sex, please be quiet. FDFY. Going over to a friend's house when I was maybe 10, and I caught him and his dad having a loud argument at the garage. I hid behind a nearby trash can and saw the dad pull out a gun and actually shoot his son in the leg. I freaked out and ran home to tell my parents, but nobody believed me until the police and ambulance showed up. It's hard to explain, but I saw the bullet penetrate his leg in what felt like slow motion. It still comes to mind every now and then. Edit. Kid was eventually fine. Never saw the dad again. I don't remember if any arrests were made. I saw the bullet penetrate his leg in what felt like slow motion. High stress situations bring on physiological changes that can also alter your thinking patterns and perceptions of reality. One of the things that can happen is a change in the way we sense the passage of time. People in shootings, stabbings or other violent crimes will often report time slowed down. I suspect that's what happened to you in this case. Was in a severe car crash as a kid. Car flipped a bunch of times. I counted 8. No one believed me. And then I also told them I saw 3 tires flying through the air. When we got the car back, 2 tires were missing from our car. 1 from the other car. My family now believes the car flipped 8 times. Time slowed down. When I was about 5, my older cousin's best friend killed someone. My cousin helped him hide for a couple days. Cops got tipped off. Warrant was issued. And with my cousin, being a multiple-time felon himself, decided to run as well. At one point, he came to my parents' house to try talking with my dad. My dad didn't want to hear it and threatened to call the cops. Cousin took off, got into a police chase, drove on the wrong side of one of our main roads, hit a car, then flipped his car over a guardrail into the river. I was completely oblivious to everything. I just remember my dad screaming at my cousin. Found out all this stuff later, and it was a huge what the duck moment. My cousin did like 15 years in prison. Edit. Spelling. I know this sounds weird, but do you have any aftermath or recollection of what happened afterwards? Not a whole lot. My dad did his best to scrub him from our lives. He would call our house every now and then begging for money, but my dad won't hear it. I never saw the guy again. But I heard, when he got released, he was only out for a few months before he went right back in. Still in prison as we speak. Friendly stranger stopped me at Disneyland and followed my family around for a while. Asked where we were staying, and I don't know any better as a kid. So I told them. Dude showed up with a friend at the hotel pool waiting for me. I thought to call out to the guy, but my instincts made me hold back. Still don't know if that was a child trafficker to this day. My mom was dating this dude and we were living with him. One morning I hear super loud bangs on the door, and I run out with my blanket and I hear my mom screaming, "Don't shoot my dogs. They are friendly," as I walked from the hallway to where the front door is. So I'm standing there with my blanket around me, and she opens the door and there's a SWAT team pointing their guns at me yelling for me to drop my blanket on the ground. Then they proceeded to tear the house apart including my room. Scared the shit out of me. I don't remember the exact details, but my mom said he was an ex-biker gang or something, and they were hitting a bunch of members. Edit. For those asking, the dogs and everyone else came out fine. Thanks for the concern. I have a similar story. My parents used to be neighbors with some cultists that believed in aliens or something like that. They said they were totally harmless and decent neighbors. Well, one of them got the bright idea to try and blow up the mayor of the town or something. Well, the FBI showed up to put an end to that shit real quick. And obviously we're using my parents' property to surround the house. My mom has to beg them not to shoot her German Shepherd before she could get him inside. Edit. So I looked up the news story, and it was actually ATF and FBI. So my bad. I just asked my dad about the story. Apparently a bunch of anti-ICE type guys moved into town and joined up into the Outer Dimensional Forces cult, ODF. Apparently the leader Nodra owned some choice property and wouldn't sell it. I guess there was some dispute over that. And a couple of those knuckleheads blew up the mayor's car that brought the feds in. He said it was kinda sad because his neighbor was actually a nice guy, but his girlfriend left him for another cult member and got mixed up in the bombing, I guess. That's why his house got raided from what I understand. Pretty interesting for a small town in Texas though. Damn, what's with cops wanting to shoot every owns dogs? I was at a friend's house and we went to a deep creek to catch frogs and turtles. From the top of the bank we spotted a swollen dead deer covered in maggots. My friend's little brother pushed me off of the bank and I landed on the deer. It burst and kind of deflated under me, and I just laid there crying and throwing up until my friend's parents came and got me. They hosed me down in the driveway and tossed me in their pool that they had just chlorinated. Super great. One comment in and I'm done. I think it can't get worse than this. So I will keep going. My 7th grade teacher was raped and stabbed in her classroom early morning while getting ready for the school day to begin. The rapist ended up being my best friend's next door neighbor. He had borrowed his PlayStation controller before the incident, so he never got it back. Did she survive? I'm pretty sure she did. I was pretty young at the time and didn't realize the magnitude of the situation. So I kind of just went on with my day and the rest of the school year. We never had a memorial service or anything, so I guess she survived. I was 7. My family took me to the circus. A man sitting behind me stuck his finger down my pant and forced his finger down my crack. I don't know what to do. I was never prepared for this. I didn't even know what this meant. So I just froze and let him. I think he was trying to find my hole and stick his finger in it because he kept pushing deeper and deeper down my pants. This was about 30 minutes. People would pass by and he pulls his hand out. But when the close was clear, he would slowly try to do it again. It was 30 minutes of hell. Finally my mom got up and asked to come with her to the concession stand to help her carry drinks. I was so relieved. When we came back I begged my mom to switch seats. That's all I remember. I barely recall the visual parts of that night, but I still vividly remember how it felt and the sound of his voice. God, that's disgusting. Watched a guy bleed out in front of me while hanging from a nail that caught him while he was falling. I don't know what haunts me more, the sound of his screams turning to crying, and then silence, or the sight of the blood pooling up at my feet. I was 8 and I can still see it and hear it like it was yesterday. Edit, since it's being asked to add some details. Basically I grew up going to a farm with my father where he worked, and one of the farmer's older sons was up on top of their new chicken coop tending to the mesh wiring and fell through the mesh, catching on a nail on the way down. He hung there for a while. I just stood there in shock. Didn't really have a clue what was happening really. He passed before they were able to get him down. When I just turned 18, I was out on the town bar crawling with mates. One of them jumped a spiked iron fence, impaled his leg, and just hung there, upside down. We were able to lift him off and got him to the hospital nearby. Fortunately, it was just a bunch of stitches and he was walking fine after a few days on crutches. He went on to become a stuntman. Man. Wild. Good for him, but a damned crazy way to start a career. I once got into a huge argument with my parents and decided to run away from home. Before I even reached the end of the street, some weird van started following me. I initially thought it had stopped because it was going to be turning into one of the driveways in the street. When it didn't turn in, I kept walking. It started following me again. I was eventually so creeped out by the van's behavior that I turned around and sprinted back to the house. Imagine if it was your parents planning an elaborate trick to get you back home. My mother is an abusive, cruel, manipulative, heartless bitch without any hint of a human soul. But I doubt even she could have arranged that in less than 5 minutes. And it doesn't seem like the kind of thing my dad would do either. The strange man in my house in the middle of the night. I woke up to pee, something I rarely ever do, and went into the hallway, where I saw the silhouette of a man I did not recognize standing at the top of the steps staring back at me. I'd like to say I screamed, but I just stood there, Thankfully, my father has also woken up, came out, and yelled at me to go back in my room and lock the door. The fact that someone we didn't know could just walk into our house in the middle of the night terrified me. It would be years before I realized if he was just burgling us. He would stayed downstairs. I hate to think about why he broke in that night. What happened afterwards? Did your dad scare him off? The official story was the guy was lost, so he took him downstairs and called the police to help him get home. But multiple cruisers showed up, so he was probably arrested. I also vividly remember hearing a gunshot, but he swears he never fired a weapon. I was young and not privy to the full story, and the last time I asked I was again given the it was some dude who entered the wrong house. My theory is that we knew him somehow. I was molested by a group of older kids when I was 4. They made me think it was just some fun game, and they got so far into my head that I was convinced that the entire thing was my fault for years, thinking it was entirely on me because I let it happen. That has to be the most disturbing memory that happened to me. It still makes me as uncomfortable now as it did when it happened. Those kind of people deserve to die. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.